In the grand, sprawling theater of the Galactic Union, worth is a currency measured in centuries. If your species has traveled the stars for 1,000 years, you are considered a child. If you have been here for 10,000, you are an adult. And if, like the humans, you have barely dusted the dirt of your home world off your boots, you are considered nothing more than a curiosity, a primitive pet allowed to sit at the table but never allowed to speak. We are taught that power looks like grand fleets, towering energy spires, and complex, incomprehensible philosophy. The aliens look at humanity with our fragile bodies, our short lifespans, and our messy, chaotic emotions. And they see a mistake of evolution. They see a species that is barely smart enough to keep from blowing itself up. But the universe has a secret. The ancient progenitors, the godlike beings who seeded life across the galaxy and built technology that modern civilizations can barely turn on, were not gods of magic. They were not towering giants of war. They were engineers. They were creators who valued grit over grace and adaptability over perfection. Today, the greatest artifact of that lost civilization, a suit of armor that can level cities, sits in a glass case in the center of the galaxy. The most powerful kings and the most brilliant alien scientists are about to try to activate it. They think it belongs to them because they are powerful. They are about to learn a terrifying lesson. The sword does not belong to the king who demands it. It belongs to the smith who forged it. And sometimes the only person in the room who speaks the language of the gods is the human girl wiping the fingerprints off the display case. Narrative begins. The basement archives of the Galactic Heritage Museum on Centauri Prime were not designed for human. The gravity was set to a crushing 1.2 Earth standard, and the temperature was maintained at a sweltering 40 degrees Celsius to accommodate the cold-blooded reptilian species that ran the administration. Mason Hayes wiped a bead of sweat from her forehead with the back of her gloved hand, careful not to streak the artifact she was polishing. It was a shard of ancient pottery, incredibly boring and incredibly fragile. Faster, human, you move like a tectonic plate. The voice boomed through the archive. It belonged to Director Kelver, a towering Saurian with scales that shimmered in iridescent blues and greens. He didn't look at Mason, he looked through her. To him, she was just a biological cleaning drone. I'm being careful, Director, Mason said, her voice steady. The molecular bonding on this shard is degrading. If I scrub too hard, it turns to dust. Excuses, Kelver hissed, flicking his forked tongue. You humans are all the same, fragile, slut. You were only hired because of the new interspecies diversity mandate. Do not make me regret my charity. Mason bit her tongue. She wanted to tell him that she held a double doctorate in xenoarchaeology and quantum engineering from She wanted to tell him that she had decrypted the shard's markings weeks ago, while he was busy preening his scales. But she knew it wouldn't matter. In the Union, humans were the new kids on the block. They were expected to be seen, not heard, and preferably not even seen. Yes, Director, she murmured. Leave this trash, Kelver commanded. Go to the main hall. The prime artifact has arrived. The Vidians need someone to clean up their packing foam. The main hall was a cathedral of light and sound. In the center, surrounded by a swarm of floating drones and tall, slender Vidian scientists, stood a massive stasis crate. As Mason approached with her cleaning cart, the crate hissed open. The breath left her lungs. Inside stood the Progenitor Armor. It was 8 feet tall, made of a metal that seemed to shift between gold, silver, and a color the human eye couldn't quite name. It was bulky, utilitarian, and undeniably beautiful. But it wasn't the look of the armor that stopped Mason in her tracks. It was the sound, not a sound you hear with your ears, but a vibration you feel in your teeth. A low, rhythmic thrum, thrum, thrum. It felt like standing next to a massive generator that was idling, waiting for someone to hit the gas. Mason looked around. The Vidian scientists, with their bird-like movements and feathered crests, were chattering excitedly, but none of them seemed to feel the vibration. Careful with the neural coupling, one Vidian squawked. This was Professor Talon, the galaxy's leading expert on progenitor tech. He was holding a delicate, glowing lattice of wires. Install it into the dorsal port. Mason frowned. She stepped closer, ignoring her cleaning cart. She looked at the schematic hovering in the air, then at the armor, then at the wire in Talon's hand. The hum in her head got louder. It sounded like a warning, a proximity alarm. "It's backwards," Mason whispered. She didn't mean to say it aloud, but the visual geometry was all wrong. The energy inputs on the armor were triangular, implying a positive up polarity. Talon was trying to force the coupling in negative down. "Excuse me?" Talon turned, his beady black eyes narrowing as they landed on the small human in the gray jumpsuit. "The coupling," Mason said, pointing a trembling finger. "You're installing the neural interface upside down. The polarity is inverted. If you turn that, it's going to short-circuit the core." Silence fell over the group. The Vidians looked at each other, then they looked at Mason, and then they laughed. It was a horrible chirping sound. "Did you hear that?" Talon crowed. "The janitor has an opinion on quantum neural interface. Go back to your mop." "Earthling," another scientist sneered. "Leave the science to the elder races. Try not to hurt yourself with the cleaning spray." Mason's face burned. She clutched her cleaning rag, her knuckles white. "I'm telling you," she said, her voice low. "It feels wrong. It's humming. It is inert metal." Kelva snapped, stepping up behind her. "It has been dead for 1,000,000 years. Now clean the glass, or get out of my museum." Mason looked at the armor one last time. For a split second she swore the empty visor turned to look at her. The hum settled into a sad waiting silence. She turned around and started wiping the glass. Invisible once again. The Grand Gala was the social event of the century. 300 dignitaries from the most powerful species in the Galactic Union filled the museum hall. The air smelled of expensive perfumes and ozone. Mason stood in the shadows near the service entrance, holding a data pad that controlled the lighting. She had been ordered to stay out of sight, to be a girl. She watched as species that had warred for eons clinked glasses and engaged in polite, venomous conversation. At the front of the room, standing next to the display case, was Ambassador Zorn of the Draken Imperium. He was a terrifying figure, 7 feet of muscle, red scales and horn. He wore the skins of beasts he had hunted on his home world. "This armor," Zorn bellowed, his voice shaking the crystal chandeliers, "is the birthright of the Draken. The progenitors were warriors. They conquered the stars. Who else but the Draken possessed the strength to inherit their legacy?" The crowd murmured. Some agreed. Others looked nervous. Zorn wasn't asking. He was claiming. "Tonight," Zorn continued, "we will activate the armor, and when it awakes, it will recognize its true masters." Mason felt a cold knot in her stomach. The hum in her head, the one coming from the armor, was back, and it wasn't a steady idle anymore. It was rising in pitch. It sounded like a scream building in a throat. Professor Talon stepped up to the podium, preening his feathers. "Thank you, Ambassador. While the Draken appreciate the strength of the artifact, the Vidians appreciate its mind. I have personally restored the neural pathways." Talon reached for the control console. His claw hovered over the activate rune. Mason stepped forward from the shadows. She couldn't help it. The hum was pounding in her skull, vibrating through her bones. She knew, with the certainty of an engineer watching a bridge about to collapse, what was going to happen. "Don't!" Mason shouted. Her voice cracked, echoing awkwardly in the massive hall. The room went deadly silent. 300 pairs of alien eyes turned to look at the small human in the gray jumpsuit. "You," Zorn growled, recognizing her from the setup crew. "The cleaning girl." "The polarity is inverted," Mason pleaded, walking past the security line. Professor Talon installed the interface backward. "If you turn on the containment field, the feedback loop will overload the armor's core. It won't wake up. It will explode." Talon looked furious. His professional reputation was being questioned by a primate. "Director Kelva," he screeched, "remove this creature." "I am sorry, Exalted Ones," Kelva stammered, rushing toward Mason. "She is mentally unwell. The pressure of civilization is too much for her primitive brain." "I'm not crazy," Mason yelled as guards grabbed her arms. "Look at the energy readings. It's spiking in the red. Please listen to me." Think you are worthy to speak to us? Zorn laughed. A deep guttural sound. A monkey teaching astrophysics to gods. Throw her out. Talon sneered at Mason as she was dragged back. Observe, human. Observe perfection. He slammed his claw down on the activation button. Zai. The sound wasn't a hum, it was a shriek. A bolt of blue lightning arced from the armor's shoulder to the glass case. Crack. The thick, blast-proof glass spider-webbed. The podium sparked. Talon was thrown backward, his feathers smoking. Stabilize it, Zorn roared. I can't, technician screamed. The energy is feeding back into the loop. It's going critical. The armor began to shake violently. The golden metal turned a sickly overheating red. Sparks rained down on the dignitaries. The perfect alien science was failing. The arrogance of the elder races was dissolving into panic. Run! Someone shouted. It's a bomb. The dignitaries scrambled, tripping over their ornate robes. Zorn drew his energy sword, unsure what to fight. Kelva hid behind a statue. The only person not running away was Mason. She shook off the stunned guards. She didn't look at the exit, she looked at the machine. She didn't see a bomb. She saw a piece of beautiful engineering that was in pain. She saw a system crying out for a ground wire. She ran toward the explosion. The heat radiating from the display case was intense enough to singe Mason's eyebrows. The air smelled of burning ozone and melting plastic. Human. Stop, Zorn bellowed from the safety of the doorway. You will be vaporized. Mason ignored him. She reached the control console. It was locked out, flashing red error runes. She couldn't read. Forget the software, she muttered to herself, her mechanic's brain taking over. Hardware override. She reached under the console panel and ripped off the maintenance cover. She saw the manual release lever, a universal fail-safe that every engineer puts in, just in case. She yanked it. A shattered glass of the display case retracted. The containment field dropped. Now there was nothing between Mason and the screaming, overheating armor. The energy arcing off it was wild, dangerous. It's okay, Mason whispered, stepping into the shower of sparks. I know, they hurt you. I'm here. She didn't try to shut it down. She knew the energy had to go somewhere. She raised her bare hand. Don't touch it. Talon shrieked from the floor. Mason slapped her hand directly onto the burning chest plate of the armor. She expected pain. She expected her hand to be burned to ash. Instead, the moment her skin touched the metal, the screaming stopped. The red heat vanished instantly, replaced by a soothing warm pulse. The violent lightning stopped arcing outward, and instead flowed into Mason's hand. It felt like sticking her hand into warm water. The silence in the room was absolute. The aliens watched, frozen in horror and awe. The armor began to change. The solid plates turned into something resembling liquid mercury, but gold. It rippled under Mason's fingers. It flowed up her wrist, over her arm, consuming her gray jumpsuit. It's eating her, Kelva gasped. It wasn't eating her, it was hugging. Mason felt a rush of data flood her mind. Not words, but feelings, relief, recognition, safety. The armor moved up her neck, over her face. She didn't fight it. It felt right. It felt like putting on a coat that had been tailored for her a million years ago. The transformation was complete. Mason hovered 3 inches off the ground. She was no longer a small human in a jumpsuit. She was an 8-foot-tall figure of burnished gold and flowing light. The armor had reshaped itself to fit her. Sleek and powerful, the faceplate hissed open, revealing Mason's face inside. Her eyes were glowing with a soft golden light. Zorn stepped forward, his sword trembling in his hand. He looked at this servant, who now looked like a god. His pride couldn't handle it. Thief, Zorn roared. You stole it. You used some primitive human trickery to bypass the locks. How dare you touch the heritage of the progenitors? Zorn pointed his blade at her chest. Do you think you are worthy, little scavenger? Do you think you can wield the weapon of the gods? Mason looked down at him. She didn't feel small anymore. The armor wasn't just metal. It was a database of history. She saw the truth. She saw who the progenitors really were. Her voice was amplified, layered with a harmonic resonance that shook the dust from the ceiling. I didn't steal it, Ambassador. Mason's. She raised a hand and the armor hummed, a happy, contented sound. And I didn't find it. My people, my ancestors. She looked Zorn dead in the eye. I made it. The statement hung in the air. Like a thunderclap. I made it. Lies. Talon screeched, scrambling to his feet. Humans were swinging from trees when the progenitors vanished. You are a biological infant. Mason didn't argue. She raised her gauntleted hand, palm up. A beam of light shot from her wrist, expanding into a massive, room-filling hologram. It wasn't a blurry projection. It was a perfect, high-definition window into the past. The room gasped. They were looking at a planet. It was blue and green. Earth. Mason whispered, the knowledge flowing from the suit into her mind. 50 million years ago. The hologram zoomed in. It showed a laboratory. Tall, slender beings. The progenitors were working, but they weren't building weapons. They were mixing DNA. They were taking samples from local primates and splicing them with their own genetic code. They didn't leave, Mason narrated. Her voice echoed. They were dying. A genetic plague was wiping them out. They couldn't save themselves, so they decided to save their potential. The image shifted. It showed the progenitors leaving Earth, leaving the control group behind. They seeded hundreds of worlds, Mason explained. But on Earth, they left us alone. They wanted a species that would evolve through struggle. They wanted a species that would learn to fix things, because everything around them was broken. They didn't want heirs who were born perfect. They wanted heirs who were resilient. This is blasphemy, Zorn roared. The progenitors were conquerors. They ruled the galaxy with an iron fist. That is why the Draken are their heirs, because we are strong. You are wrong, Mason said calmly. The hologram changed to a scene of a progenitor shielding a smaller creature from a storm. They were protectors. They were gardeners, not soldiers. She took a step toward Zorn. The heavy footsteps cracked the floor. You looked at their technology and saw weapons, Mason said. You looked at their history and saw conquest. You projected your own nature onto them. This arm, it isn't a war suit, Zorn. It's a hazmat suit. It's a rescue rig. It's designed to walk into hell and carry people out. Zorn's face turned a deep, violent purple. His entire worldview, his religion, his justification for war, it was all being dismantled by a human janitor. I will not be lectured by a lab experiment, Zorn shouted. If that armor is a rescue suit, let us see if it can rescue you. Zorn lunged. He was fast for a massive creature. His energy sword swung in a lethal arc, aimed at Mason's neck. The dignitaries screamed. Mason didn't dodge. She didn't draw a weapon. She didn't even flinch. She simply raised her left arm. Clang. Zorn's blade, capable of cutting through starship hulls, hit Mason's forearm and bounced off. There was no shield flare, no spark. The armor simply absorbed the kinetic energy and dispersed it. It was like hitting a mountain with a stick. Zorn stumbled back, shocked. He swung again. A flurry of blows. Mason blocked them with open palms, gentle parries that pushed his blade aside without hurting him. Fight me, Zorn screamed. Strike back. No, Mason said. She caught his blade in her hand. Her metal fingers closed around the energy beam. The armor's dampeners kicked in. The energy blade fizzled and died. She gently twisted the hilt from his grip and tossed it aside. A parent does not strike a child just because the child is throwing a tantrum, Mason said softly. Zorn fell to his knees, staring at his empty hands. He wasn't beaten by force. He was beaten by a complete lack of it. The weak human had shown more restraint than the strong Draken ever had. The room was silent, save for Zorn's heavy breathing. Mason stood victorious, a golden statue of calm, but the universe wasn't done with them yet. Suddenly the floor lurched. A deep grinding boom echoed from beneath the museum. The lights flickered and died, replaced by spinning red, emergency strobes. Warning, warning. The automated voice of the museum computer blared. Core instability detected. Fusion containment failing in lower sector 4. Structural collapse imminent. What is happening? Kelva shrieked. Talon checked his datapad, his face pale. My initial activation attempt, he stammered. The feedback loop. It didn't just overload the armor. It surged back into the museum's power grid. I destabilized the fusion core in the basement. You did what? Mason asked, her voice sharp. It's going to blow, Talon whispered. We have 10 minutes before this entire building becomes a crater.
Panic ensued. The dignitaries rushed the massive blast doors, but they were sealed tight. Security protocol active, the computer droned. Doors sealed to contain blast. Open, Zorn roared, slamming his shoulder against the door. It didn't budge. Talon tried to hack the panel. The system is locked out. I can't override it. The superior aliens, with their centuries of advanced tech and arrogance, were trapped in a box of their own making. They turned to Zorn. Smash it. Zorn hit the door until his shoulder bled. Nothing. Slowly all eyes turned to Mason. She was the only one not panicking. She was scanning the floor with her helmet's sensors. Quiet, Mason ordered. And this time everyone listened. She wasn't speaking as a diplomat or a prophet anymore. She was speaking as a mechanic. The doors won't open because the core is surging, she explained rapidly. The fail-safe thinks we're already dead. We can't hack the doors. We have to fix the core. She pointed to the floor. I can see the schematic. The magnetic constrictors are misaligned. I need to go down there and manually bridge the connection. You can't, Talon said. The radiation levels in the basement will be lethal. Even with that armor, it will cook you. Mason looked at the floor. She could feel the heat rising through her boots. She knew Talon was right. The armor would protect her body, but the neural strain of holding the suit together in that much radiation would fry her brain. Someone has to do it, Mason said, or we all die. She looked at Zorn. Ambassador, you're strong. I need someone to help me pry open the maintenance shaft. Can you do that? Zorn looked at the human he had tried to kill moments ago. He looked at her extended hand. He stood up, wiping blood from his mouth. I will do more than that, Zorn grunted. He turned to a young Draken standing in the crowd. His nephew Krell. Krell, Zorn said. Go with her. You are small enough to fit in the vents. Help the human. Krell nodded, stepping forward. He looked terrified but determined. Let's go save the day, Mason said. Mason and Krell descended into the dark underbelly of the museum. The emergency stairs were bathed in red light. The air got hotter with every step. Why are you doing this? Krell asked, his voice rasping in the heat. My uncle tried to kill you. We mocked you. Why save us? Mason didn't look back. Because I can. That's the only reason that matters. They reached the reactor door. It was warped from the heat. Mason jammed her armored fingers into the gap. Her servos whined. With a grunt of effort, she tore the metal door off its hinges and tossed it aside. Inside it was like stepping onto the surface of a sun. The fusion core was a spinning ring of white-hot plasma, wobbling dangerously on its axis. Arcs of electricity whipped through the room. Stay behind me, Mason shouted. She expanded the armor's energy shield, creating a bubble of safety around Krell. The manual bridge is over there. Mason pointed to a lever on the far side of the room, separated from them by a chasm of broken machinery and plasma fire. I can't reach it, Krell yelled. I can, Mason, but I need you to guide me. My sensors are blinded by the radiation. You have to be my eyes. Mason stepped into the fire. The armor hissed. Warning alarms screamed in her mind. Temperature critical. Shield integrity falling. She waded through the plasma stream. It felt like walking through molasses. Every step was a battle. Her mind started to fuzz. The radiation was seeping through the psychic connection of the suit. Left, Krell screamed. Step left. There's a gap. Mason obeyed. She trusted the young alien. She reached the manual bridge. It was two massive copper cables that had been torn apart. She had to hold them together. She grabbed one in each hand. Initiating bridge, she screamed. She slammed the cables together. Boom! A massive shockwave hit her. Her body arched. She became the conduit for the entire building's power grid. It was agony. It wasn't physical pain. The armor took that. It was mental. It felt like her memories were being burned away. Hold it, Krell yelled, watching the monitors. The core is stabilizing. 80. Mason screamed, her voice mixing with the roar of the reactor. She thought of her workshop. She thought of the smell of oil. She thought of being invisible. I am not invisible anymore. 100%, Krell shouted. It's stable. Let go. Mason tried to let go, but her hands were locked. The magnetic field had seized the armor. Krell didn't hesitate. The young Draken, without any armor, sprinted across the room. He grabbed a heavy metal pipe and slammed it into the release latch of the cables. The cables snapped into their locked position. The connection broke. Mason collapsed. The armor was smoking, glowing a dull, angry red. Krell dropped to his knees beside her. He dragged her heavy armored body away from the core, grunting with the effort. He pulled her out into the hallway, and collapsed beside her. Human, Krell wheezed. Mason. The faceplate of the armor flickered. It didn't open, but a weak synthesized voice came through the speaker. Did we fix it? Yes, Krell laughed. A dry, raspy sound. We fixed it.
Mason woke up to the smell of antiseptic, but this time, the air was cool. She opened her eyes. She was in a medical bay. But it wasn't the cramped, dirty clinic in the human sector. It was a royal healing chamber. She tried to sit up. Her body felt like a bruise, but she was alive. Easy, a deep voice rumbled. Mason looked to her right. Ambassador Zorn was sitting in a chair next to her bed. He looked out of place, a giant war lizard in a delicate medical room. He was holding a small, human-style cup of water. You have been asleep for 3 days, Zorn said. The museum, Mason croaked. Standing, Zorn replied, everyone survived, because of you. And my nephew. Zorn stood up and bowed. It wasn't a mocking bow. It was a deep, formal bow of submission. I sought a weapon, Zorn said quietly. I thought the progenitors left us a sword to conquer our enemies. Instead, I found a guardian who saved those who mocked her. You have shamed me, Mason Hayes, and you have taught me. The doors opened. Director Kelver and Professor Talon walked in. They looked humble. Talon was holding a data pad. Mr. Hayes, Kelver said, wringing his hands. We have been reviewing the museum protocols. It seems we have made some errors in staff allocation. You think? Mason smiled weakly. The council has convened, Talon said, looking at the floor. We recognize you as the primary operator of the Progenitor artifact. We would like to offer you a position, head of the new Progenitor Research Division. You would have full clearance, a staff, a salary suitable for a station commander. Mason sat up. She looked at the aliens who had treated her like dirt a week ago. I accept, Mason said. But on one condition. Name it, Kelver said. No secrets, Mason said. The research division won't be a vault, it will be a school, an open academy. I want Draken engineers working with human biologists. I want Vidian coders teaching Brontha miners. The progenitors didn't leave this tech for one species. They left it for the class project. If we don't share it, I walk. And the armor walks with me. The aliens exchanged looks. It went against centuries of tradition. Agreed, Zorn said, from the corner. The Draken will send our best students, including Krell. 5 years later, the Galactic Heritage Academy was bustling. Students from 50 different worlds filled the lecture hall. At the front of the room stood Mason Hayes. She looked older, more confident. She wore a professor's coat, but underneath you could see the shimmer of the gold armor that was now a part of her. Settle down, she called out. The class went quiet. Today we're going to talk about the Great Filter, Mason said. The theory that civilizations destroy themselves before they reach the stars. She tapped the holographic display. The progenitors survived because they realized that intelligence isn't enough. Technology isn't enough. You can have the biggest gun in the universe, but if you don't know when to put it down, you're just a danger to yourself. Mason walked through the rows of students. She stopped at the desk of a young human girl who looked terrified. The girl was holding a wrench, looking at it like it was a mistake. She was surrounded by tall, impressive aliens. Mason smiled. She remembered that feeling. What's your name? Mason asked. Alara. The girl whispered. I'm just here on a scholarship. I'm just a mechanic's daughter. The class giggled. Mason raised her hand. The golden gauntlet hummed. The class fell silent instantly. Alara, Mason said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Do you know who built the engines that carried the High Ambassador here today? A mechanic, Alara said. And do you know who keeps the life support running on this station so we don't all suffocate? Mechanics, Alara said, sitting up straighter. The progenitors didn't leave their greatest gift for the strongest warrior or the smartest scientist. Mason said, looking around the room. They left it for the one who was willing to get their hands dirty. They left it for the fixer. Never let anyone tell you that you are just anything. Mason winked at the girl. I started as a cleaner in the basement. Now I run the place. That evening, Mason stood on the balcony of the academy. looking out at the stars. The hum of the armor was quiet now. A contented purr in the back of her mind. She felt a presence beside her. It was the ghostly holographic projection of the armor's interface. It took the shape of a progenitor. A tall, faceless figure of light. "You have done well," the voice whispered in her mind. "We have a lot of work to do," Mason replied. "The galaxy is still a mess." "It is supposed to be," the voice said. "If it were perfect, there would be nothing for you to fix." Mason smiled. She looked down at her hands. One flesh, one gold. Humanity had spent so long looking up at the stars, wondering if they belonged. They had waited for an invitation. They had waited to be told they were worthy. But worth isn't something you are given. It's something you build. Mason Hayes turned back to the door. Tomorrow was Monday. There were students to teach. There were bridges to build. And somewhere deep in the archives, there was probably a broken fusion regulator that needed a little percussive maintenance. She was ready. And so the human janitor became the architect of a new age. The aliens who laughed at her eventually learned the most important lesson of all. You can judge a species by its fleets, or by its city. But if you really want to know what a civilization is made of, look at how they treat the person holding the broom. Because in a universe full of entropy and chaos, the act of cleaning, fixing and maintaining is the ultimate act of defiance. We didn't just inherit the stars, my friend. We earned them one broken circuit at a time.